Here's an example of how to use SAS to access the Postal Code Conversion File Plus. First thing we have to do is start up SAS, and we'll bring SAS up on the screen. And there's SAS. And the next thing we'll do is open up the folder where the SAS programs, etc. are located on my hard drive. And they're located, in my case, on the desktop in a folder called PCCF 6A1. And if I open that folder, this shows you where you would install the postal code conversion files, which you would get from Statistics Canada or through the Data Liberation Initiative. And this is the layout for the files. The two places that you need to be most concerned with are the programs, which sort of sit outside the folders, and there will be a sample program provided by Statistics Canada, and in the sample directory. And the sample directory contains a number of files that work with this postal code conversion file. I've included a number here. The one that I'm going to focus in on is the initial postal code file that we want to work with, which is in a text file, pcodes1.txt. And if I open that file up, you'll see that it's just a listing in a text file of postal codes with no space, then a space, and then an ID number. And what the postal code conversion file expects is not a flat ASCII text file like this, but rather a file in SAS dataset format. And those files all have the extension SAS7BDAT. So really what we're going to try and do first is create a SAS dataset from the pcodes1 file that we've got, and the way we'll do that is to jump back up to the main directory and start this program, which I've labeled read PCCF1.SAS. And if I double click on that, I will open up this file within my SAS program, and there's the program. And in a nutshell, what it does, and I've just given a comment here to show what your file format has to be, but what it basically does is it will read in the postal code and the ID and then format it appropriately for use within SAS. And so what we're going to do is run this program, which is already set up to the directory up here where I've got my data sitting right up here. And then I'm also telling it where the actual data sits in the file name step. And so if I run this, it goes away, and one of the outputs is a listing of the data that's in the ASCII text file. If I close this down and minimize SAS, I can see that in my sample directory, I now have a file called myfirst.sas7bdat. That file, if I open it up, an actual data set in SAS format that mimics the same data that I had in the text file. So that is an input file that we need now for the postal code conversion file to do its work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shut SAS down and start from scratch. I'm going to go into SAS and run this program, this user data 6 program, which I've set up based on the original program provided by Statistics Canada. One of the first things that we have to do is note that within SAS we have a program here that requires some inputs. There's initial description, but then if you scroll down, this is the area where you need to make some changes. And so these changes start with step 1 and step 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. What you need to do is make the changes here that match your setup. So you need an install directory. This is the directory where all of my postal code conversion files are located. Then you need to specify the input data library, and that is the directory where my data is located, which is in the sample directory within this parent directory. And we also have to provide the name of the input file, which in this case is a file called myfirst.sas7bdat, but here it does say specifically with no extension. So we just give the name of the file, not the extension. The third thing we have to do is provide a name for the file output, and this is myfirst_out. And this will generate both a data set that links the postal codes to census geography. That's the standard output from the Postal Code Conversion File Plus. But it will also generate a file with an underscore problem suffix that gives you all the problems that may have arisen from your conversion. Third thing you have to provide is a place where an output file can go, and this output file contains a summary in .pdf format, so Adobe Acrobat format. And that looks like all we have to change for this time, because we don't really want to change from residential or institutional. We'll stay with residential, and we don't need to change for this British Columbia FSA flag. But if we scroll down a little bit further, one of the things that I didn't note earlier, but I'm going to note now, is the fact that the format that the data that I input is here. And this in the default program, this ID format in the input program is $15 period. So it's a character variable with 15 spaces, 15 characters. I've changed it to $10 because that's what the input file format I've got is. So having done that, you basically then just come up to the top here and click on Submit, the little running man, and the program will go away and run for you. I'm going to pause the recording at this point, and we'll come back to it when the program is run. Now that the program has run, we have an output file. This is the summary PDF file that comes up. And what this file does is gives us a summary of what the Postal Code Conversion file did for us. And you can see in this that it does have a range of output information. It tells you about retired postal codes, matches with random allocation, so on and so forth. So it's really something that you'll need to look at the Postal Code Conversion file documentation to interpret better. If I minimize that and go back, there is a log file down here as well, and the log file is quite long and lists off all of the things that the SAS program did on your behalf. It's actually quite complicated, or at least it seems to me to be quite complicated, and I generally don't look at this unless there are problems, and if there are problems then this will tell you what the source of the problems are. Perhaps not terribly clearly, but it'll give you some hint as to where your problems may have arisen. The other thing you have to note is that we have in this output two files, as I mentioned before. We had a file listed down here, myfirst_out, and that's where your postal code conversion output is, one that you really want, which is the link between the postal codes you provided and the census geography that you're interested in. So where are those located? Well, the way to find those is within SAS, go into the Explorer window, and then go into Libraries, and then go into Work, this Work folder, and there's myfirst_out, and you can't see what the rest of it is, but this one is in fact the actual results file that you want. This is the problem file. I'm just clicking quickly on the problem file. We'll see that it didn't have any observations. That means that there were no problems on this particular file. If I open up the myfirst_out file, this one is actually called work myfirst_out, and this file is the one that actually links up the ID, the postal code, and all of the census geography and fields that you'd be interested in looking at. And this is the one that a lot of researchers will want to make use of. And that is this quick introduction to SAS, the Postal Code Conversion File Plus, and getting these things to run.